G'day and welcome back to Critical AFL on YouTube for a late Monday review of a messy loss to North at Hands Oval in Bunbury. For anyone wondering about the delay, I had prepared some pretty scathing notes of North Melbourne late in the third quarter, just when we looked like we were finally going to put them to the sword. But then, as we all now know, the fourth quarter turned that on its head. And as the final siren sounded, I looked down at my notes, which were now obsolete, and decided to put the laptop away and just cool off a little before we went out to dinner just over here. I'd imagine there's probably a lot of similar stories from everyone watching right now about how the game finished. And it also occurred to me that most of you probably would be happier watching this video today after a little bit of time to cool off too. Just a wild assumption, really. Anyways, for today's video, I'll be covering a brief overview of the match, who our best performers were, and then finally my key takeaways from the match. Before we get going though, I'd like to just make my humble request to anyone watching who isn't a subscriber to please consider subscribing to the channel. Recently, Critical AFL reached 1,000 subscribers, which is a huge milestone and is what was required to monetize on YouTube. But as a reasonably new channel, every new subscriber still makes a big difference, as I'm sure you can imagine. So if you enjoy this video, here at Critical AFL, you'll find weekly reviews of both the AFL and WAFL matches, including my predictions for who's pushing their way into the AFL side from the twos every week. But on that note, let's get back into the review. And as I'm sure everybody watching would agree, the first ever official AFL game in Bunbury started as ugly as any game of football that I've seen. Through no fault in the venue whatsoever, by the way, I should probably add before it sounds like I'm digging at Bunbury. It was early in the first quarter that I noticed a really clever little diamond zone that North had set up just deep of centre half back, just pushing that ball too deep or too wide or into the hands of an intercept mark. It's nothing new, it's just flooding. But it was costing the Kangaroos at least two additional players in defence. What surprised me was that rather than using the zone for a brief period to control the tempo, North looked like they had settled and were preparing to play a full 4 quarters of footy in their back half. For me, it was clearly an unsustainable way to go about the modern game. But then, unfortunately, we got the yips. By the end of the first quarter, West Coast had 1 goal 8. And early in the third quarter, it was, I think, as bad as 1-13 just before we got our second goal, which we finally did get. And then the floodgates did open in the third. For me personally, like I said earlier in this video, that third quarter breakthrough felt like a really good moment to start piling on North's game plan. Just because in the modern game, it's just a losing strategy. And I have to say that I do stand by that, even though we did go down in the end. I'm just not sure that anyone watching that yesterday could argue that West Coast lost the game out of anything other than inaccuracy. And to be clear, no, I don't credit the defensive zone for that inaccuracy. Just not when you've got blokes missing from 15 metres out in front. Unfortunately, AFL is a game of human beings, and when teammates start seeing each other miss, it does place a very strong, clear distraction in their minds when it's their turn to line up next. And it just takes, a couple back on the scoreboard to break that, which we did get in the end. Anyway, one of the good things about losing a game through inaccuracy is that it does leave the door open for a lot of positive performances to focus on. And starting at the top of my best players list was Elijah Hewitt. Hewitt ended up with 22 disposals and a desperately needed goal, which was the equivalent of a bag at the crucial point in the game when he kicked it. The disposal count was the equal second highest in our team of 22, that was. And it has shifted in game style across the entire squad that we don't get large possession numbers. So you can probably round that number up a little bit too with that context. But just as importantly for me, Hewitt's defensive pressure sets the bar at West Coast in my eyes. I know I've said this before, but for a few weeks in a row now, I've actually been thinking I should put together like a compilation of his tackling or his body-to-body defensive run just to highlight how good it is. And I think that for all the tough times West Coast has had this season to date, it's been really rewarding seeing young guys like Hewitt stepping towards the top end of our team, especially after putting him at the top of my off-season list of players to get excited for this year. And I think mainly I'm probably just excited that doesn't result in any injuries or any setbacks anymore. He's really getting that clean run, and we're seeing why he is the guy we're all excited about, because I know I wasn't the only one. Number 2, Jack Graham, as always, is right up there in our best. And on a day where defensive pressure from West Coast stood out, during that dominant 3.5 quarters. It's hard to look past his work alongside Hewitt at the top of our best players list. Like I do say regularly, especially about Graham, he is a bit of a known quantity for us, so I won't repeat the same things in detail about how he played every week, other than to say he was in our best. At number 3 for me, it was really good to see Tyrell Dewar back up and about after giving him a heap of praise during the preseason, and then there was a flat few weeks recently that has probably had him closer to the fringe of the selected 23. But Dewar has become a bit of a specialist for us in overlap handball receives, just using his pace and kick to get the ball over the back of that defensive zone, which I noticed yesterday happened a few times. It was very helpful considering North in particular decided to entrench themselves behind the ball all day. He racked up, I think, 21 disposals, and I know a couple of those did come from kick-ins, but it was more his impact around the ground that was impressive for me. I think he went at 90, what the website says that he went at 91 disposal efficiency, and he also took a really impressive 633 metres gained as well. Harry Edwards was right up there with the other names I've mentioned in our best. After playing what I'm certain was his best AFL game to date, he pulled down 5 marks, 4 of those were contested, and had a massive 13 intercept possessions, which is a higher number than his actual disposals that I see recorded on the website. So I can only assume that the statistic includes possessing the ball maybe to stoppage, or just that one of those stats is wrong. But either way, even if it's out by a bit, that's a huge number of intercept possessions. Either way, he was our one-man wall key defender, and like I said, played his best game of footy against the Roos yesterday. Other strong performances came from Liam Baker, as usual, Tyler Brockman, and I think that's probably getting to the as usual point, although it's very exciting that as usual sits in our midfield now with him. Harley Reid as well played a pretty good game. Ruben Jinby, as usual, did all the things that he always does. He's just getting a little bit more involved every week that goes by, and also Matt Flynn. But to be fair, I was pretty happy with just about everyone's individual performances, and I could easily rattle off another bunch of names at the top of that list as well. I was quite sceptical, by the way, of us bringing in Flynn without his backup for that ruck duo, maybe against Sherry, leaving Bailey Williams in the waffle. But Flynn really did hold up strong in all of the ruck contests that he had. Don't let the numbers fool you. We rotated more. And what I keep saying from Flynn is that he just continues to get a little bit better every week now that he's fit and playing. And I'm very happy with the AFL standard that he's putting out with us. So unless I do decide to go through every single player on the side yesterday, that will have to be all for my summary of strong performances, which brings me to my key takeaways for the match. Number 1 is that I believe North Melbourne gained nothing other than a reasonably pointless 4 premierships points that they walk away from Bunbury with. And I say that because, like I mentioned earlier, the flood of players they sat in defence for 3 quarters is a losing game plan. And Clarkson only got away with it, in my opinion, because of what I have described as unrelated inaccuracy from West Coast. You could probably say that some of the shots from out of deeper spots may have missed because of that, but the absolute yips that we got had nothing to do with it. I won't lie and say that West Coast could have done without the 4 points because we probably needed them more than North, but our loss does not translate into their gain, in my opinion. So it's a bit pointless what we witnessed at Hands Oval in Bunbury. My second key takeaway from the match is that, speaking of premiership points, I expect that there will be more wins ahead of us in the back end of the season if we continue to maintain a game plan and intensity that we've been seeing improve all year. And then my final key takeaway, since I've decided to fixate on premiership points in this review, is that there's a very strong chance, after all the close losses we've already had, that we will be heading into the national draft this year with picks 1 and 2, due to the wooden spoon, as well as band 1 compensation for our star captain, Oscar Allen, who I'd like to add I have nothing but respect for. So for all the draft nuffies out there, look up Cooper Duff Tyler and then add the best midfielder from this year to our list, who we don't quite know who that's going to be, especially with all the affiliated players. And I think we may complete the draft component of our rebuild at the end of this year. By the way, Cooper Duff Tyler is the best ruck looking, well, definitely the best from this year, but for quite a few years coming up. He plays a similar game to Luke Jackson, as a ruck that basically acts like a midfielder, and he's already, I think, 1 centimetre taller. But anyways, that's all from me this weekend of footy just gone. As always, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you've subscribed to the channel, then I'll hopefully see you all again next weekend, starting with the waffle on Saturday before what should be an exciting, hopefully, contest against Carlton at Optus Stadium on Sunday. And until then,